You could know Bay City a long time without knowing Idaho Street. And you could know a lot of Idaho Street without knowing number 449. The no vacancy sign had been there a long time. Beyond the screen door, I could see someone at the kitchen table. He was counting money. Hey, I need to see the manager.
Not in, Bub.
Who are you?
Wants it to you.
I want a room.
No vacancies, Bub. Can't you read the large print?
I happen to have different information.
Huh? Go fry your head in it.
Well, if he wasn't the manager, who was he? And what did all the money mean? This corroded place didn't look like the First National Bank of Idaho Street. I could go downstairs, bide my time, and wait and see what the man and the money were up to, or I could open the door and ask my questions now, while there was still only me to ask them and only him to answer. Rent day?
You came in anyway.
Don't sit on the floor just to be chummy. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, pulling guns and knives on people that are just looking for a place to live.
Take the dough and beat it, but don't ever think we wouldn't catch up with you.
You take the dough and beat it. I'll put your gun in the mailbox when I leave.
Never mind about the heater. The town's full of old iron. But you could leave the shiv with Clausen. I've done quite a bit of work on it to get it into shape.
And with it?
Could be. Maybe we meet again someday soon, when I got a friend with me.
The room was full mostly of bad air and gin, but there was a reminiscence of marijuana smoke. The guy on the couch was breathing like an old Ford with a leaky head gasket. Sloppy drunks like this guy will tell you anything you want to know, if you don't push too hard. So I could just wake him up by tapping on the bottle and asking him a few questions. If that gets his attention. Some people don't cooperate with you unless you reach out and grab them and make them pay attention.
Who the hell are you?
You the manager? He nodded and nearly fell off the couch. I poured him a slug of his medicine, and he drank it with the beautiful anxiety of a mother welcoming a lost child.
It must be I'm kind of a little bit drunky.
You're not bad. You're still breathing.
What gives?
I'm looking for a man named Orrin P. Quest.
Huh? Moves away.
When?
Give me a drink. I'm not happy.
This might help you concentrate.
Beat it. I got friends. A couple of boys take care of you. Now, let me talk to the doc. Vince, the doc. It's Lester B. Clausen, that's who it is. You just tell him to...
That was about all he could manage for the time being. The house was silent as I started up the stairs with Lester B. Clausen's passkey. I let myself in to room 214. It wasn't empty. I beg your pardon. The manager told me this room was vacant.
You can always try knocking.
Why would I? If the manager said the place was empty, he must have thought you already moved out. Okay if I look around?
There's a no vacancy sign on the house. So what makes you think if you come here, you'll find one?
A man named Orrin P. Quest told me about it. There was a look on his face that you might call watchful, but it was a watchful face to begin with.
You ain't getting nowhere with that breezy manner, Bub. What kind of dick are you, city?
Your grammar is almost as loose as your toupee.
Lay off my toupee. What's a beef?
No beef. I just wondered why you had the room.
I moved from room 215. This here's a better room, that's all. You satisfied?
So, you're Hicks.
How did you...
George W. Hicks. It's in the register, room 215. You said you moved from room 215. If I had a blackboard, I'd write it out for you.
Don't get tough with me.
What happens with people that get tough with you? You make them hold your toupee?
You lay off my toupee if you know what's good for you. What's your connection?
I gave him my card and told him I was looking for Orrin P. Quest. He asked why, but I didn't answer.
Okay, you don't have to answer. I'm a careful guy myself. That's why I'm moving out.
So, Hicks was leaving. He was the only witness I had to the whereabouts of Orrin P. Quest. At least he'd seen him, or maybe talked to him. I could pump him for more information now, or I could try to find out more about Hicks and where he was going. Maybe you don't like reefer smoke.
That and other things. That's why Quest left. He was a respectable guy, like me. I think a couple of hard boys threw a scare into him.
Why?
You just mentioned reefer smoke. Maybe he went to headquarters.
In Bay City? Why would he bother?
So, what kind of work do you do, mostly?
Anything that's reasonably honest.
Reasonably is a word you could stretch. So's honest.
You're so right. Let's get together some quiet afternoon and stretch them. I'd heard Hicks leave the room and walk around downstairs. I heard a car drive away, and I searched room 214 and 215, but found nothing that connected either of them to Orrin P. Quest. Above the silence, I heard a car driving off in the distance. Then something for the first time penetrated my mind. A drunk like Clausen ought to be snoring his head off. He wasn't making a sound. I could leave whenever I wanted to, just by turning the knob. Clausen's friend, I kept it. I could take it, or another piece of evidence for my collection. I could take it, or I could leave it for the cops. Another piece of evidence for my collection. I could take this number and call it from my office, or I've taken a lot of evidence, haven't I? I could take it, or I could leave it there for the police to find. I took it. I did a nice, quiet 35 getting away from the neighborhood. On the edge of the city, I called the Bay City Police. I gave them the address of the late Mr. Lester B. Clausen. They asked why that was important. I told them the coroner would want to know, and hung up. Orphan May Quest was waiting for me when I got back to my office.
Did you find Orrin yet, Mr. Marlowe?
Not yet. I found out that the dump on Idaho Street is peddling reefers. That's marijuana cigarettes.
Why, how disgusting.
Orrin must have got wise and threatened to report it to the police, so they threw a scare into him.
Orrin just gets mean when people try to run him.
Okay, so they didn't try to scare him. Say they just cut off one of his legs and beat him over the head with it.
Are you trying to frighten me, Mr. Marlowe? I paid you $20 for a day's work. All you've done is find out that Orrin lived in a bad neighborhood. It doesn't seem to me you've done a day's work.
But the day isn't over yet. And don't bother about the $20. You can have it back if you like. I didn't even bruise it.
I didn't mean it like that. I know you're doing the best you can, Mr. Marlowe.
With the facts I have.
But I've told you all I know.
I don't think so. How often did Orrin write before he stopped?
Every week.
About what?
He wrote about his work and the plant, and sometimes about a show that he'd been to. Sometimes it was about church.
What did he do for fun?
He has this expensive camera.
And he stopped writing how long ago?
Well, about 3 or 4 months. But it was like I told you.
And she really told me everything she knew. If I believed that, I could back off a little. On the other hand, maybe it was time I pointed out to her the parts of her story that didn't add up.
Just like I said, I
know what you told me. Now I'll tell you what's wrong with this picture. What's wrong is you're not scared. And you ought to be scared as hell. I can't see myself waiting for my summer vacation to come around before I started asking questions. I can't see myself bypassing the police. I can't see your dear old mother sitting there in Manhattan. No letter from Orrin, no news, and all she does is take a long breath and mend up another pair of the minister's pants.
You're a horrid, disgusting man. Don't you dare say my mother and I weren't worried.
You were worried $20 worth, honey. But about what, I wouldn't know. Just put this hunk of folding back in your saddlebag and forget you ever met me.
I'm not very likely to forget your rudeness. Nobody in the world's ever talked to me the way you have.
Don't think about it too much. You might get to like it.
I suppose you think I did that on purpose.
Did what on purpose?
I'm sorry I was mean. I'll call you.
It hadn't been much of a kiss, but it looked like I had another crack at that $20.